Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. How can one balance daily responsibilities with increased worship during the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah? Excellent question. So, many of us, when it comes to the month of Ramadan, we make a special concerted effort to have time wherein we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala freely. So some people take leave, some people make sure that the leave days, the holidays coincide with Ramadan because they can dedicate some time for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then. It's a bit more difficult during the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, considering that it is the daytime that is more significant. So in Ramadan, the nights are the best nights of the year. But the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the days are the best days of the year. Now for many, you have obligations of work, you have family, you have school, study, university, and the like. How then can we ensure that we make the most of the time period while still fulfilling our daily responsibilities? And the question in a broader sense can be, how do we have this work-worship balance? Now in Islam, what's beautiful about this deen is that we are not compartmentalizing our lives so that in the masjid we are a certain way, but then in our workplaces we are different. Or when we are worshipping Allah we are a certain way, but then when we are with our families we are different. Islam does not recognize this at all. Rather, we are Muslim always, in every time, in every place. As the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, اتَّقِ اللَّهَ حَيْثُ مَا كُنْتَ. Have taqwa of Allah wherever you may be, whenever you may be. So in light of this, we can ask the question, how can I ensure that my daily activities, right, are going to be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that during the sacred time of the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, I can maximize on the benefits that are contained therein. This is as opposed to the person who asks, how can I seclude myself for specific acts of worship and get away from my work, get away from my family, get away from my responsibilities because I need to focus more on ibadah. In other words, we need to broaden our perspective as to what ibadah is. Ibadah is to be an Abdullah. It is to be a servant of Allah. A servant, a slave, is not only doing tasks of devotion, right? To do a task of devotion, that's like the English word worship from Skype, right? An old English word. So we don't just do tasks of devotion. When we're available, then we'll do some tasks of devotion. No. Our identity, right? Who we are, intrinsically, we are servants of Allah. So what we can do is, instead of thinking about it as, how can I make time for ibadah? Rather, how can I make my life into ibadah? How can I turn my work into ibadah? How can I spend time with my family as a form of ibadah? And there are two essential elements for this. The first is the niyyah, right? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. We know the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, actions are according to the intentions. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى إِلَى آخِرِ الْحَدِيثِ. And a person will only get what they intended, right? And then he goes on to say that whosoever performs hijrah for Allah and His Rasul will get that reward. But whosoever performs hijrah for a different reason, right, the migration from Makkah to Medina, whosoever did so for an ulterior motive, perhaps to marry someone who made that a condition, or for some worldly benefit, then they're only going to get that. So consider the person who wakes up in the morning, it's the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and they go to work, and the intention is, I'm going to work because I must go to work, I need to go earn some money, and that's it. That there is going to be a limited intention. All you're going to get is a fulfillment of your duty, and you're going to get your salary at the end of the month, inshallah ta'ala, and that's that. But the person who leaves their home in the morning with the perception that I am going to seek my rizq, that Allah ta'ala had made an obligation upon me, and I'm going to provide for my family bi'idhnillah, and I'll commence my work with bismillah, and I'll fill my work with dhikrullah, and I will abstain from sinning for the duration of this period in which Allah Ta'ala had provided me with this opportunity to earn my rizq. That person has transformed their work life into their worship life. Similarly, spending quality time with one's family, right? This is part of our lives, right? This is not a separate task for a believer. Spending time with one's family, spending time with one's children, spending time with one's spouse is a form of ibadah. If we have the intention that through that act we will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will fulfill the rights of those in our lives, because this is what the sunnah teaches us, then our quality time with our family becomes an opportunity for ibadah. Even to the extent of conjugal relations between a husband and wife. The Sahaba were also perplexed by this when the Prophet ﷺ informed them, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةً, that in the fulfillment of one's carnal pleasure, in a halal manner, there is sadaqah. So the Sahaba asked, Ya Rasulullah, if we fulfill our pleasure, we're going to get rewarded for that? And the Prophet ﷺ responded by a counter question, and he said, well, what do you say if somebody fulfills their pleasure in a haram manner? Will that incur punishment and wrath from Allah Azza wa Jal? And of course it would. So therefore, a person who selects, right, they choose the path of righteousness and they fulfill their desire in a halal manner, that person will get rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the bottom line is, instead of trying to compartmentalize one's life, where we have ritualistic acts of devotion and then we have the rest of our lives, bring the two together, bi'idhnillah, and have our entire life as a form of devotion for Allah. Our eating, our sleeping, our working, even our downtime, our relaxed time. I like to call it nafsi time, right? Where you just want to let your hair down and just relax. As long as it is with a sound intention and it is in conformity with the teachings of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then insha'Allah ta'ala, these mundane everyday tasks can be tasks that take us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So do we have to, create spaces for extra devotion, focused devotion, heartfelt devotion? Bi'idhnillah, if you can, that would be great, right? Because your heart will feel and be impacted by this in a great way. But as far as the blessings and the rewards that we can potentially derive from this, is working for our family is not a good deed, in fact, a fard that Allah Ta'ala had placed upon the shoulders of the male figure of the household? Of course. So have that niyyah. Make sure we are in conformity with the teachings of Islam, and we will change our entire lives and our entire daily life, right? The mundane tasks into acts of worship, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And this way we can maximize the benefits of the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So it's not that you specifically need to dedicate time to fast, dedicate time for recitation of Quran, for dhikrullah. The more you can do of that, the better. But ensure that everything else that you do every day for these 10 days has a special intention and is in complete conformity with the teachings of Islam. Barakallahu li wa lakum. May Allah bless us and guide us and grant us the tawfiq to make our every moment, our day moments, our night moments, moments of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.